Hi everyone, Mr. H here. This is part 3 and last of Final Accounts, chapter 3.4. In our previous video, in part 2, we presented the balance sheet and explained each of the parts of the document and how to elaborate a proper balance sheet. Now we are going to talk about this specific aspect that I mentioned. It belongs to the higher level of the IB Business Management Program, which is the depreciation. Okay, how do we get to that number? Depreciation is the decrease in value of a fixed asset. Okay, so fixed assets get old over time, either by wear and tear. Either by the constant use of that premise or machinery or equipment or vehicle. So with every year, by wear and tear, it will get older and older, so it will lose value. Or by obsolescence, which means like new technologies or better technologies would make your either machinery or vehicle or equipment obsolete, and therefore it would lose value due to the appearance of the new technology or the new equipment. So that decreasing value has to be represented in the balance sheet to cut it from the actual cost or the actual price of the original price of the asset or all the assets. So how do we get that number? There are two possible ways shown in this course. Number one, the straight line method, which is the easiest one. To get the straight line method, you need three values. So to get the annual depreciation, which will be a constant number every year, you have to get first the original cost minus the residual value, which is the original cost is the original price of the asset minus the residual value. What is this? This is the final price or the final value of that asset after a number of years. Okay, so is how much the asset will be worth at the end of a number of years. Okay, that's the residual value. So original cost minus residual value, and you divide it by the expected useful life of the asset. So let's say if you have 10,000, if your asset cost $10,000 when you first bought it, and you think that by 4 years, the value will be 2,000. Okay, so the expected useful life of the asset is 4 years. Okay, so you calculate 10,000 minus 2,000 divided by 4, the number of years, and you get that the annual depreciation would be 2,000. So every year you discount $2,000 from the cost of the asset. So I can show you this with a chart. Okay, so the original cost was this, the residual value is this, and when you do 10,000 again minus 2,000 and divide it by 4, the number of years of the expected useful life of that asset, you get that the annual depreciation expense will be 2,000, and you accumulate this number in the balance sheet to get the actual value of the asset. That actual value in every year is called the net book value. Okay, the net book value is the actual price or the actual cost of that asset every single year. So the net book value for year 1, 8,000, for year 2, 6,000, and so on until you get the final residual value at the end of the last year, okay, of the expected use life of the asset. Okay, very simple. You get the price, you get the residual value by the end of those years that you think the asset will be useful. You divide it by the number of years, and that's it. You get a constant annual depreciation value for every year. Now, what's good and bad about this straight line method? Number one, let's take a look at what is good. It is a simple process, like very simple. You just need these two values and the number of years, and that's it. Okay, very, very simple. It is more suitable for inexpensive assets, the ones that do not cost so much, okay, like little equipment. Why? Because these might get small amounts of depreciation every year, which is something positive for your balance and your profit. It's not really good for the bigger expensive assets. So Why? And this is the negative part. Number one, it doesn't consider efficiency loss and the amount of repairs, I mean, the cost of repairs. You know that as big equipment gets older or vehicles get older, you will have to spend more money on repairs and stuff. So that's not considered here. It's a very simple, simplistic, let's say, way to calculate depreciation. So this is why we say it is more appropriate for inexpensive assets, the ones that are not so expensive. Um, you have to also consider that sometimes there is greater depreciation in the first years of the use of the asset. Okay, there will be great depreciation in the first years. Why? Because like machinery or equipment might require more care, and you will be spending more money, and the depreciation therefore will be greater in the first few years, and then will be less. And also, it doesn't consider the idea of obsolescence. I mean, if in these between these 4 years, new equipment or new technologies are appear in the market that would cut value from your asset. I mean, this is not shown here. So again, it doesn't consider obsolescence. Not good for the most expensive assets that you have in your business. The second method is a reducing balance method. Okay, this comes from a calculation that goes year by year. So you will need to not just make calculations, but use a similar chart like this to show what the depreciation would be in every year, because it will be different. To calculate the net book value of the first year, of year one, you have to get the original cost, like in the other. Okay, and you will get it by subtracting the original cost times the rate of depreciation. This is a percentage from the original cost. Okay, so original cost minus original cost times the rate of depreciation. This rate of depreciation is a specific previously acquired value. It's a percentage that you will use to calculate how your asset depreciate over the years. Okay, so it's a previously acquired number that you get. It's a specific percentage that you will use. Okay, or a value that will be given to you to use to make the calculations. So we have the chart, and using the very same example of the previous method, if your asset is worth $10,000 when it begins, when you just buy it, at the end of the first year, you make the depreciation calculation. Let's say the rate of depreciation is 33%. Okay, let's say that's the rate of depreciation for our asset. This is the value given to you to calculate the depreciation, and then this is what you get. Year number one, you multiply, you get the 33% of 10,000, and then you get the depreciation for year one. What do? As I said here, to get a net book value on year one, you have to subtract this annual depreciation, which is this, minus the original cost, and then you get that by the end of year one, the value will be reduced to 6,700. As you can see, just by comparing these two methods, something that does happen here is that the depreciation goes higher, or the highest, in year one, and then it goes lower and lower. Something that was a problem of having a constant annual depreciation amount of money for every year. So in this case, since we're considering that the asset depreciates in a percentage, we just cut the percentage from the original cost, and you get the number here. Then for the following year, you're not using the original cost. You're using the net book value of year one, to get the net book value of year two. So you again multiply this by the percentage, you get the new annual depreciation expense, and you subtract it from the previous net book value. You get this number. Same process. Go down here, multiply or get the 33% of this last net book value, get the new annual depreciation, subtract it again. Same calculation, go get the 33%, last net book value, you subtract it, and finally you get the last net book value for year four. Okay, considering this this asset lasts for years. What is good about this and what is bad about this? What is good about this? Well, this is more realistic and more accurate, okay, than the previous method. It, as I said, it is the best, the most suitable method for the most expensive assets, okay. However, is more complex. You need to get this rate of depreciation, this percentage number. It is either given, okay, or already given, or you have to use some specific calculations to get the rate of depreciation. Um, one thing to consider is that it lowers the profit in the first few years, as you see. The annual percentage will be bigger here. So since it will be bigger, it will cut. It will lower the profit in the first few years of operations of that specific asset. So that's something that you have to consider. It and because the rate of depreciation is still either a given number or a calculated number, it might be a little bit subjective. So even though this calculation is more realistic and more accurate than the previous, it still has a space, a little bit of space for for subjective for a subjective view. It's still a little bit subjective, and that's something you don't have to forget. So even though you're getting a more realistic number, still numbers. It still doesn't consider a few things. So even though better, still not perfect. Okay, something not to forget. So these are the two methods I wanted to explain today about depreciation, and they are the ones that are considered in the IB program for business management. And this is it. That's it for chapter 3.4. We're done.